Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another class. So today we're going to be looking at the second part of the speaking test, the B1 speaking, which for those of you that might know, that's the photo description part. I can see we've got a few more people joining us. That's great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Will you please leave me a little message in the chat just to let me know that you can hear me okay. Say hi. Let me know where you're watching from. Okay. Right, let's get started. So welcome everyone to another class. Today, like I just mentioned, today we are looking at the second part of the B1 speaking exam, the photo description part in particular. My name is Fiona and I am an English teacher. I also work as a Cambridge examiner. So hopefully I can give you some useful advice, useful insights. Good, thank you. Good, you can hear me. Okay, right, let me share the presentation with you today. We're gonna start with a joke, as always. It's a bad one, like really, really bad. So let's see if you can get it. Let me just share my screen with you all. Hopefully it should all work. No problem. Here we go. Okay, right. Terrible, terrible joke. Really, really bad. I apologize. I'm sorry. Here's your question. What did one ocean say to the other ocean? Any ideas? If you think you might know what it is, write it in the chat for me. Let me see. I think there's just a little delay on the chat. I'll give you a moment. What have we got? What did one ocean say to the other ocean? I'm going to give you 10 seconds just to see if you can get it. Maybe you've already written it and there's a delay. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What a shame. Well, what did one ocean say to the other ocean? Nothing. They just waved. Get it? Like waved, like a wave. Oh, I'm sorry, that was terrible. Okay, right, let's move on. All right, so this is what we're looking at today, okay? Part 2 of the speaking exam. And I'm going to give you, again, just a very brief overview of what to expect in the speaking exam. Very quick look at the marking criteria, specifically the bits that are relevant and that you need to know for part 2. Then we're going to watch an example of 2 students doing this part of the exam. We'll look at some of the images that they use and talk about some of the language that you can hear. Then we're going to do some practice. We're going to look at some example photos and try to think of what you could say in that situation. Maybe a couple of common errors or common things to avoid. And we'll finish with a quick quiz, just like we did last week. I do have some different novelty glasses and things to put on for you later, if you get the questions right. If not, then no glasses for you. And yes, that was a very bad joke. I apologize. Okay, so speaking exam overview. I think we went through this last week, but just in case you missed it, okay, there are 4 parts to the speaking exam. Part 1 that we looked at last week, part 1 are some basic questions from the examiner for about 2 minutes. These are normally personal, day-to-day type questions. I'll just write this for you. Part 1. Personal questions from examiner. Okay. Part 2, which is what we're focusing on today. Any ideas what part 2 is? I did just say it. Were you paying attention? Just having a look. Anyone got it in the chat? No. Okay, so we've got part 2 is the photo description. Basically, the examiner will give each person a photograph and they have 1 minute to describe what they can see in the photo. Okay. Part 3 is the interactive discussion. Okay, there we go. Part 3, interactive discussion. The examiner will give you a situation and you and your partner have to talk about it and look at some possible options or solutions to this situation. And that again takes approximately 2 minutes. And then on to part 4. Part 4 are some more difficult questions. Again, questions from the examiner, but not personal questions. And if possible in part 4, it's always good to try and interact a little bit with your partner. So for example, if the examiner asks you, do you like to take part in competitions? You can say, well, no, yes, I do. What about you? Okay, try and ask the other student something as well. It's good fun. Okay, so there we go. There's our breakdown of the exam. And like I said, today, this is what we're focusing on. Part 2, photo description. So let's get into it. Okay, now for this part of the test, really, we're only going to be looking at certain categories because this is a descriptive activity. So one person is going to be speaking for an extended period of time. In this case, it's 1 minute. There's no conversation and no interaction. So for this part of the exam, change the color of my pen. There we go. This part of the marking criteria is really not relevant. And it's not really used at this part of the test. It comes in the next part, in part 3 and in part 4, but not really in part 2. Okay, but we do still have grammar and vocabulary, we have discourse management, and we have pronunciation. So as always, describing the photos is a really good opportunity to show off your vocabulary. Okay, to show that you know some words that are specific to the topic and that are maybe not so day to day. It's also quite good because this part of the exam doesn't really change. It has a very fixed structure. You can prepare in advance some complex grammatical forms like the passive or conditionals that you can definitely use regardless of what the photo is of. Now, we'll talk about that more in a little bit. Discourse management is very relevant for this part of the exam. This is your ability to speak for an extended period of time without too much hesitation or repetition. Okay, and that's very important. We can have a little, here we go, some repetition, but not too much. Just a little bit is fine. We're also looking for a range of cohesive devices. Those are our connectives, a range of connectives. And, but, however, although, whereas, good variety. Pronunciation, of course, this is relevant throughout the entire exam. The examiners need to understand what you're saying, and they need to hear word stress and sentence stress more or less correctly placed. Okay, so just a reminder of what the examiners are looking and listening for. So let's have a look at an example. Okay, this is the photo that the student is going to talk about. So we're going to watch a video of 2 students doing this part of the exam. This is the first photo that we're going to talk about, and here's the second. Let's focus on this one first. So before we watch the video, I would like you to listen for something in particular. Okay, I really want you to try and listen out for what the situation is, where it is, where's the location, when, is it during the day, is it at night, is it in the summer, is it in the winter, for example. Why do you think this situation is happening? How do they feel? Okay, how do the people in the photo feel? And any objects. Okay, objects. Well, we could include that in what, I suppose. Objects in the photo, things you can see in the photo is what. Okay, so while we're watching this video, I'd like to try and think about these three things. Listen out for what the student says. And when you hear some, if you want to write them in the chat, that would be great. Let's find our video, just a second. Here we go. Okay, so we watched the first part of this last week. We're going to watch just the next little section. Okay, I think we're starting with Kenza. She's going to describe the photo that we just saw. So let's see how she does.
Now, I'd like each of you to talk on your own about something. I'm going to give each of you a photograph, and I'd like you to talk about it. Kenza, here's your photograph. It shows someone getting information about something. Mohammed, you just listen. Kenza, please tell us what you can see in the photograph.
I can see a lady which is maybe connecting on a laptop and reading on a book. He is normally in a library, or I don't think she is at home. Maybe she is preparing for an exam, for getting more information. Maybe she is revising. That's it.
Talk about the place.
I can see that she is in a library. There are a lot of books, and she is sitting alone. As I said before, she is maybe revising or preparing for an exam or presentation or...
Thank you.
Okay.
Mom?
Right, let me just pause that and flip back to the photo. So would anyone like to make any suggestions in the chat about what Kenza said about this photo? Did she mention the what, the where, the when, the why, and how did she feel? Did she mention those things? She mentioned some of them. Let's see. Right, I heard her talk about, I'm going to write it here, write it in blue. Okay, she mentioned the lady. Oh, that's very difficult to read. Okay, she mentioned the lady, and she mentioned the location. She said that she is in a library. Maybe I'll write it here. Okay, she's a lady, she's in the library. So she's got who, and she's got the where, the in the location. She mentioned some of the objects, like this object here, I would say is a laptop. Just like that. She's got a laptop and some books. And she also mentioned that she is not at home, which I would say is correct. And she made some suggestions about what this lady is doing. She said that she might be revising or preparing for an exam. I'm going to write that here. Might be revising or preparing for an exam. Okay, so Kenza Well, she covered some of the things in this photo, but I think she could have talked a little bit more about the location and about the specific places of objects in the photo. For example, let me just get my pen. Let's do red. We could say that in the background there are books. Yeah, thank you. Library, computer, books, for sure. In the background there are books. On the right, we can see here, I think it's a window. On the right, we can see a window. And also, we can see at the front a table and some chairs. So there are lots of objects that Kenza didn't talk about. She also could have mentioned the woman's clothes. She could have said, she's wearing a grey cardigan, some bracelets. She's got blonde hair or red hair. So there were some missed opportunities there, I think, for Kenza. So let's zoom on. Let's look at a different photo. Here we go. So before we watch the next student attempting this in their exam, why don't we make some suggestions in the chat? So what are some things you might mention? If you're describing this photo, what are some of the things you might want to include? Leave me some messages in the chat. So remember, what, where, why, when, who. I've got some ideas. I'm going to circle the things that I think are important. Maybe you have some alternatives. Got some objects that we could talk about. We've got an activity that the person is doing and a location. Okay, so imagine if this was your exam, what would you say? If someone asked you to describe this photo, what would you put in that description? Just a minute to think about it. Any ideas in the chat, remember? Yeah, good one, thank you. So we've got a guitar, sofa, mug on the floor, reading a magazine or a book. Yeah, I think it's like a big book, but could be a magazine. He looks like he's got a phone on the floor next to him. I think he's probably relaxing, like after work, maybe. And I would also guess that it's probably winter or autumn because he's wearing a long-sleeved hoodie and a hat and long trousers, which to me suggests that it's cold weather. Good, some good ideas. All right, so let's go back to our video and let's see how the other student, Mohammed, let's see how he does with that description.
Mohammed, here is your photograph. It shows someone relaxing at home. Kenza, you just listen. Mohammed, please tell us what you can see in the photograph.
Yeah, I see one man, he's relaxing on his sofa and he left his mobile on the floor because he didn't want to distract by his mobile. And maybe he's a musician because there is one guitar just next to him. And maybe he just come from outside and he didn't take out his clothes. He just start to read and having one cup of tea and relaxing in his home. And maybe he's live alone because there's no one with him. And his home is very tidy. There's no toys for his children or something. That's really maybe he live alone in his flat. And I think that the weather outside is cold because he didn't
Thank you.
even.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay, so it's only 1 minute, remember, that you have for the description. So it's quite a short time. I thought he did quite a good job. He mentioned a lot of the things that we mentioned previously. And he also used some good vocabulary to give his ideas. He said, maybe it's cold outside, maybe he's relaxing. So he's like hypothesizing and giving his ideas about what could be happening in the situation, although you can't really tell for sure. All right, so with that in mind, let's have a look at a new picture. All right, so this is a very typical example or typical type of photo that you might see in the exam. Okay, now we can see a nice event happening here with a family. So I'm thinking, if I was doing this exam, if I was doing this task, I would want to describe, first of all, the people in the photo. So I would say, I can see a family. I think they're a family because we have an older lady here who I think is the grandma and possibly the grandpa here on the right. Then we have the parents and the children. So we have a whole family eating dinner. What else can we see in this picture? We've got some really good objects or good vocabulary items that you could include. Any ideas? Let's see if you've got any suggestions. I'm not sure if this is a chicken or a turkey. Let's call it a chicken, a big chicken, dinosaur chicken, or as Susan says, a hicken. I think she means a chicken. Okay, so yeah, we've got a chicken. So I think this could be, let me just write our vocabulary here. Chicken, not a chicken, chicken. We've got a family. Okay, and what are the family doing? What do we think is the situation here? I would say that they're probably celebrating. It could be Christmas, because if this is a turkey or chicken, that's quite a traditional festive food. So let me just add that in a phrase. So they might be celebrating Christmas. Because, don't forget to give your reasons. Okay, they might be celebrating Christmas because this is a very traditional Christmas food. I can also see something here that I think they are Brussels sprouts. Let me just write that here. Yeah, that's right. Granny has cooked a special meal, I am assuming. Brussels sprouts. Sprouts. They look like quite nice Brussels sprouts. We've also got wine glasses on the table. Now, if you're in the exam, you might also want to include the specific location of objects or of people. So we could say, on the right, write that here, on the right, I can see the dad, and he is looking at the food and he looks very happy and excited. And on the left, I can see a little boy. He's also looking at the food. And in the background, me just write that here. In the background, I can see some plates and a fridge, maybe, or a cupboard. Also a plant, another plant. And then on the table, we can see glasses, plates, bowls of food, and it looks like a nice special occasion. I assume it's winter because of the clothes that they're all wearing and the fact that it looks like a festive meal. Okay, so there's some good things that we could say about this photo. All right, I think we might have time just to have a look at another one. Let's see. Okay, slightly different situation. Let's see if in the chat, if we can think of, let's do 4 things, 4 important things that we could mention about this photo. Remember, we're trying to include what, where, when, who, perhaps why. Let me just write that. What? Where? When? Who? And why? Yeah, we've got some good ideas in the chat. Just write this up. Why? Okay, so we've got a picnic in a park, 4 people and a dog. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think this is a picnic. I can see a blanket, some cups. So maybe a picnic or just drinks. Okay, so we could say it's in this photo, we can see a picnic in the park. We can see 4 people and dog. Obviously, the dog is the star of the photo. So already we've mentioned what, we've mentioned who, we've mentioned where. When? I would say, I think this photo was taken in summer. I think this was taken in summer because the weather looks very good. It looks sunny to me. And maybe, why are they having a picnic? I think they might be having a picnic because they are celebrating someone's birthday or they're celebrating the end of exams, possibly. I think they're all friends. And we could always mention perhaps the physical appearance of the people. So I wonder if anyone in the chat can tell me about, the boy or the man on the right? So the man on the right, how would you describe his physical appearance? What's he wearing? What's his hair like? Yeah, in summer for sure. Any suggestions? The man on the right. This one. I would say, let me think. I would say he's got short curly hair and a beard. Beardless skinny man. I think that's the other right, or maybe this is mirrored for you. No, I don't think so. This is the beardless skinny man. Thank you. I think this man is bearded. He's got a beard, he's got curly hair, he's got a grey t-shirt and a watch. He's wearing black trousers and trainers, I would say. And we can also see the 2 people in the center are wearing sunglasses, which also indicates that it's summer. So remember, one thing to bear in mind is your prepositions. For this part of the test, let me just change the color of my text for a moment. Okay, remember we say on the right or on the left. We might say in the middle. That's quite difficult to read. I wonder if I can put that somewhere else. Not really, maybe there. Well, hopefully you can read that. In the middle, we say at the top or at the bottom. And we say in the corner. So it's important to remember these prepositions of place in this part of the test, because it's really the only opportunity that you have to show them. Okay, so showing that you're able to describe the location of something accurately is a good skill to have. Okay, so try to remember these prepositions: in, at, and on. On the right, on the left, in the middle, in the corner, at the top, at the bottom. And of course, we can use positions like next to, in front of, behind. We might also say in the background or in the foreground. All useful phrases to have for this part of the exam. Okay, we're gonna do one more photo, I think, and then I'm gonna give you a little test. This looks like a more glamorous version of me in the morning. So let's think. What would we say about this photo? First of all, the first most obvious thing, I can see a woman in the kitchen. I think it's the morning because she is drinking coffee, and I can see coffee on the counter in the kitchen, and she has a mug or cup, and she's yawning, so she's probably very tired. On the left, I can see some food. That might be cereal or pasta. And I can see some vegetables and some kitchen utensils. On the right, we can see a fridge. And in the background, there's a cooker and I think some knives. I think the season might be summer because there's a lot of light, but it's difficult to tell, and because it's early in the morning. Maybe she's getting ready for work and she needs a bit of energy, so that's why she has her coffee. All right, so there's a nice description of this photo. Okay, I'm gonna quickly just highlight a few, let's say, errors or things to keep in mind when you're doing this part of the test. Yeah, exactly. Just woken up yawning. Thanks in the chat. That's right. Very good description. Okay, common errors or things to keep in mind for this part of the test. So I think my number one for common errors would be the prepositions of place. Okay, these, I hear students quite often make mistakes with these, so just try to keep that in mind. And these, I remind you, these we looked at here, okay? At, in, on, and making sure that you use them correctly. Okay, prepositions of place, I would say, are important. Another thing that is quite important for this part specifically are your connectives. Okay, so I'm going to write that here. Connectives. For example, let me just make this a bit bigger. For example, also, and, but, because, therefore, yeah. Although, okay. Another one, if you can use it, might help to boost your marks a little bit, is as I said before. This phrase is very useful. So if you can slip it in, I recommend you do, because it applies to lots of different situations, lots of different photos. It doesn't really matter. And it's a higher level connectives. So that connector, so that will help you get more marks as well, which is always good. Something else to keep in mind for this part in particular are modal verbs. Any ideas in the chat what modal verbs are? What do I mean by modal verbs? I'm curious if Susan knows. Maybe she could give me an example of some modal verbs that we could use. She's a bit confused, I think. So modal verbs are words like can, could, might, may, should, must. Okay, there are others, but these are some of the basics ones. So these are modal verbs are the words that accompany a verb to imply sort of uncertainty. And they're used for different functions and different degrees of certainty and uncertainty. So for example, we'll go back and look at this photo. I think it must be the morning because she looks very tired, she's yawning, and she's wearing a dressing gown. In that case, I used must because it's very obvious. Okay, must we use for a strong possibility. However, if we look at maybe might, for we're slightly less certain, we're just speculating. I think it might be summer because there's a lot of light. I'm not certain. Maybe it's just a good light in her kitchen. It might not be summer. Okay, so we use these for different degrees of certainty. One thing to be careful of, a mistake that I do quite commonly here, is, let me just write it here for you. She can be in the kitchen getting ready for work. Just expand that. Okay, so in this case, I often hear students using can when they're talking about or speculating about what the situation is. Be careful with can, because can in English is usually only used to talk about ability or to ask for permission. All right, so just be a little bit careful with this one. A better option in this case would be could. She could be in the kitchen getting ready for work, or she might. Okay, these two are used for, and may as well, actually. These three are used for, possible situations. Okay, right. Let's have a little quiz. I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen because I don't need it anymore. Don't do that. Whoops. Sharing my screen. Hello, I'm back. All right. So I've got 3 quiz questions for you today. And I do have a selection of novelty glasses and things that we can put on every time you get a question correct. So I hope you're ready. I'll give you a little time to think and to write your answers in the chat. And okay, my first question for you. Question number 1. What is the maximum number of people that can be in the room of the speaking exam? What is the maximum number of people who can be in the room for the speaking exam? If you have any ideas, write them in the chat. Remember, you are not the only student. Nope, it's not 3. Now remember, we have the interlocutor is the person who speaks to you. We have an assessor, who is the person writing down your results. We have you, the student. And how many other students can there be? Try a little bit more. You haven't earned any novelty glasses yet. I'm going to give you just another second. Come on, you can do it. Nope, you are incorrect. In fact, the maximum number of people you can have, there can be in the room during your exam is 5. Okay, the maximum number. Normally you have 2 examiners. Okay, you have the interlocutor who speaks to you, and you have the assessor who takes some notes. So that's 2. You have you, the student. Normally, you have a partner, so 2 students, 2 examiners, but on some occasions, there can be a group of 3 students. So that would be 3 students, 2 examiners, 5 in total. Oh no! Okay, sorry, that was incorrect. Next question, question number 2. In part 2 of the speaking exam, how long does each person have to speak for? Okay, for what duration of time does each person, each student, have to speak for? You have to describe the photo. For what duration of time? Any ideas? Come on, I want to be able to use my glasses today. How long is that speaking part? 2 minutes is would be for each person. 2 minutes in total. If you're with a partner. It's a very short amount of time. Any ideas? Yes, okay, so it is 1 minute per person. Only 1 minute to describe that photo. So not long at all. I'm going to celebrate with my happy glasses. Woo! I can see at least out of this eye, so that's good. Okay, and the final question. Name 2 things that you should mention about the photo in part 2. Name 2 things you should mention. regardless of the photo. It doesn't matter what the photo is, but 2 things you should always mention about the photo. Come on. I look ridiculous. Any ideas? I might just have to tell you. There are a few different things. We could talk about the location. Yes, you got it, just in time. Where and what? Yeah, location, what. We could talk about the people. We could talk about the objects. We could talk about the activity, what's happening. Well done. I think I'm going to celebrate with some party glasses. Woo! Well done, guys. Okay, so we're going to leave it there for today. That's the end of today's session. Thank you very much for coming along. And don't forget to subscribe to the Home Studies channel and click the little notification icon so you'll get a notification when we have our next session. That will be next week at the same time. So that's 8:30, 8:30 for me. That time might vary depending on where you are. Next week, we're going to be talking about the listening part of the test, specifically the first part. Listening part 1 is on the agenda for next week. So if you have any questions in advance, please leave a comment, not in the chat, but in the comments. Any questions or anything in particular that you would like me to include in next week's lesson. And thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to say goodbye, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Goodbye, guys. Bye-bye.